The thing with Kiyomi is, we're gonna keep it internal. Um, some I read somebody sent me a I don't know, post that the Kansas State men's basketball coach at one of his recent press conferences, and he talked about his faith and how he sees coaching as a ministry, and what he does in terms of leading and connecting with the young men on his team springs from his perception and his understanding that what he does is a ministry. And for me, coaching is not just about what happens on the court on game day. It's about how we impact these young women that are in our program in all aspects, from their character to their growth into womanhood, into their decision making. And so, I see my role as a coach as being more than X's and O's and wins and losses, but how am I impacting the young women in my care? And so that's always going to be first and foremost in the decision making that we do that goes into this program. It's about defining character, growing young people, and so as we deal with different circumstances and situations, for me the first thing is, how are we impacting these young people? How am I using my position and my role as head coach to grow teenagers into young women? And so what we're doing here, we're going to keep the specifics and everything internal, but I'll never turn down an opportunity and turn down this position, use this position to do anything other than have an impact on young women's lives.
Thank you. Coach,
Now, this is Leonard Ellerby. He's CEO of Mayweather Promotions, big-time sports executive. He's a promoter. He's one of McMiller's advisors ever since November, according to the press release. Now, that last part, that's important to me, because that would mean that he was not on her executive team, as they're calling it, when the decision to go to Rutgers was made. So he made a statement about the situation and said, and quote, "In my opinion, this should have been handled in an entirely different matter, and I think this is embarrassing to the entire program," end quote. Now, there's reports from New Jersey Advanced Media that claim people with knowledge of the situation told New Jersey Advanced Media that the decision to not play McMiller was made after a locker room altercation with a teammate following a recent game. Now, those are just claims. Again, nothing's been substantiated. Now, there is a sentiment just in the internet comments that some of these issues are the reason why players talented as Kiyomi didn't receive offers from some of the top programs in the country. I personally can't speak to that, except to say I've always thought that she was a lot more talented than what her offers would have suggested. And she showed that in the Jordan Classic as well, against all the top names in the country. So if you watch the channel by now, I've been a fan of her game. I've been talking about her since before this season. Way back in the last season, I've been talking about Kiyomi McMiller. A lot of Zam Jones as well, but I've been saying her name a lot. So I'm a fan of her game, but I'm not a fan of the way that this was handled by her or her personal team at all, honestly. Just be honest with you. I'm not also a huge fan of the second half benching at Maryland by the coach. If there was indeed a locker room altercation after what I would assume was that game, then the benching at USC, that makes perfect sense. But the benching at Maryland, even with the 7 turnovers, even with the inefficient, high-volume shooting, that's what you signed up for. That's what you signed up for. That's what she's been all season. That's what you allowed to happen just 2 games ago when you needed her to play 40 minutes to get that win against Lafayette. So I don't agree with that personally. Now, we don't know what happened, but in my opinion, both sides come out looking bad here. And it really doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It's still just both looking bad, because for the Rutgers program, regardless of the details of this situation, this now makes 2 years in a row where they've had an issue with one of their star players, Kayleen Schmeichel. Played her last game for Rutgers on December 17th last season. Then she sat the rest of the year for a supposed medical issue. She transferred 2 weeks after the season was over. She's now with Maryland, leading that team in scoring, absolutely on fire from 3 this season. I'm hoping Kennedy Smith can put that out in this next game, but she's thriving over there. They're the 8th ranked team in the country, all right? So if the same thing happens with Kiyomi McMiller, now you could say your ex was a crazy one. People will rock with you. But if it happens twice and then both exes get married and immediately thrive after they leave you, your sister and them looking at you like maybe it was you, man. Maybe it was you. That's all I'm saying. So people might not blame the coach, but players with other options might go look in those directions. Right now, so far, they only have one incoming freshman and only 6 players on scholarship for next season, including Kiyomi. So besides a bunch of transfers, I'm not really sure what the future of this program looks like, especially if they lose a player like Kiyomi McMiller. Now, as for Kiyomi, her post rubbed people the wrong way, including a lot of her fans who she addressed in that post. Some fans didn't like the My Fans intro. Some fans cited a lack of accountability or transparency. Some felt like there was too much transparency, like she should have said nothing at all. Some didn't care for her dropping the product nickname in this particular post. It was a lot that people picked at on this one. I didn't really care about the post. I thought it was in bad taste, but what was more egregious to me was the reposting of the Instagram stories afterward, disparaging the team, talking about the transfer portal. That was a lot worse, in my opinion, than even announcing that she wasn't going to be playing and throwing the coach under the bus. But going back to Ellerby's statements, he actually said some stuff about the transfer portal, which I also thought was in bad taste. He said, quote, "I don't want to speak in terms of long term, but you don't treat people like this. You don't handle a situation like this. I'm trying to say the right thing here. Who knows what her future looks like right now? Who knows what her future looks like? This matchup was between the 2 top players in the entire country," Ellerby said. "It was a phenomenal matchup, and the entire basketball community was locking in to watch these 2 generational talents trying to lead their teams to victory." That was actually true. It was definitely a matchup that Kiyomi was excited about. She let it be known that she has tremendous respect for Juju and that she wanted to guard her. This is very disappointing because the whole thing could have been handled differently. All right, I'm going to address that in reverse order of the things that he said. First of all, Kiyomi just had a huge matchup against 5'6" Jelani, and she didn't light it up. And if she couldn't stop Kayleen Smichael, who's 6 foot, Cheyenne Sellers at 6'2", what the hell you thought she was going to do against Juju, trying to defend her? That's absurd, first and foremost. That's a horrible strategy if that's what they were going with. Pretty sure the coach disagrees, but whatever. Secondly, matchup between the 2 top players in the country. Respectfully. And I've already said here that McMiller is already a top 5, maybe top 3 point guard in the country, but that's his boxer promoter Kate peeking out right there because that's a reach. That's a reach. This wasn't the top 2 players in the country, but I can't be mad at him. That's his player. He's in her camp. The worst part to me was to publicly question her future like that as her advisor. Just felt emotional. Anybody else is just talk coming from him as somebody who's on the inside, who's going to be giving her advice, and we know it, not a good look. Especially if you combine that with her sharing those Instagram stories. And now, right or wrong, their sides, it just looks a little petulant. Leave all the transfer portal talk to people like me, and even me. I've refrained from talking about players transferring, just out of respect to their current teams. It's too early in the season. Once it's on the table, we could talk about it then, end of the season. Which, hell, since they put it on the table, let's talk about it now. Should Kiyomi transfer? And if so, where to? Let's just talk about it. I personally, I'm not saying she should, but if you think she should, where do you think she goes? Seeing as how she didn't receive a lot of offers from top schools before. Best option to me, just take your lumps, get back on the floor this season, keep all the equity that you built up to this point, because you do have a lot of fans and you have built a lot of goodwill up. A lot of people, saying that you're that. A certain amount of damage, it's already done, but I just feel like a strong finish to the season. Few more viral clips, and most will be forgiven. But as far as all of her teammates unfollowing her, even the school's Instagram page no longer following her, I don't know how salvageable that is, just to be honest with you. I mean, all they have to do is follow her back. It's not that hard as a finger tap, but of course it's not that simple. So I don't know how repairable those relationships are and if she would even want to stay in a situation that's probably super awkward at this point. But at least if she does salvage the season and she may get some of those calls from some of those schools that didn't offer before, then she can transfer. And most people will understand that she had options available that weren't initially available, and she simply upgraded programs. People won't really look at it as a failure on her behalf. But if she just ends her season now, and obviously she can't use that same medical reason that quietly sat Kayleen Smichael last season, right? Everybody it's kind of out in the public what's going on now. So you already have people comparing her to Kennedy Carter in flattering and not so flattering ways. So she just ended the season now. This all lingers in the next year, and this pretty much stays on her jacket all the way into the draft. But what if she went another route? There is another path that we have to consider because there's been a lot of debate about whether or not American women basketball players should be able to enter the WNBA draft earlier than what the current rules allow. You have to have graduated from a 4-year college within 3 months of the draft or be 4 years removed from high school graduation. Either or. Now stick with me because the NBA, they have a similar rule, except only 1 year is required. But in 2008, Brandon Jennings became the first American teenager to escape that NCAA 1 year rule, and he inked a $1.2 million deal to go play overseas as a pro. And he didn't even star while he was over there playing in Rome either, but he was still selected 10th overall in the NBA draft, which is pretty much equivalent to being drafted 4th in the WNBA. So if Kiyomi was able to go over there and actually star in her 3 years, similar to something like what Stephon Marbury did, who he has a whole statue. And he has a whole statue and a museum built for him in Beijing. And he left the NBA sort of a what if type of player. So if Kiyomi can show up like even half of that for her 3 years, now we're talking a whole different ball game when it's time for the WNBA draft and Unrivaled League, right? Now she's a star, a different type of star than what we're seeing these NIL stars be. These are the options. Because I don't see transferring to a lesser team or an equal team as an option. Either just play this out, stick with this team, play this out, transfer to a better team, or let's take the Brandon Jennings route. Let's take the tough crowd route. I'm not necessarily suggesting that she go this route. Going overseas is hard for anybody, especially somebody that young. And I'm pretty sure she can reach out to Brandon Jennings. I'm pretty sure she can talk to somebody like Alexi Brown or any of these players, WNBA players who've had to play overseas and get some advice, much better than what I can give, and obviously much better than what Leonard Ellerby is giving. But this is a route, all right? And I already know if the rules doesn't change soon, somebody will end up taking that Brandon Jennings route. And if there's anybody that could make it work with her game, especially with Jordan Brand behind her, it's Kiyomi McMiller. Like, she be viral over there. I was just watching Camila Cardoso put up 37 and 14. I would definitely love to see viral clips of Kiyomi McMiller over there breaking ankles. So it could work out for her, but look, she calls herself the product. First 3 letters of product, pro. If she's truly the product, maybe it's time to take it to the market. And if not, then her and her advisor should just relax on all the transfer talk. They just focus on getting back on the court as quickly as possible and redeeming the rest of this season. I promise you, she'd be better off for it, rather she transfers after this season or not. She'd definitely be better off just ending all the transfer portal talk and her team pulling back a little bit and acting like professionals, honestly. Handle your business in the off season. People are respected a lot more. So that's all I got for you on this one. Hope everything works out for them. My eyes are on this USC versus Maryland game. Let's go ahead and preview that one, matter of fact.